I'd like to introduce Alex Linde, VP of Mobile and Digital Apps at the Weather Company, to talk about the performance of their cool new mobile apps. So, hey, Alex. Come on down, grab a seat.
Thanks very much. Welcome, everyone.
Cool. So you guys made a lot of news recently when you announced that you reached 100 million app downloads. And I think, I guess the title of the session just kind of says it best, like what is next for you guys? And what do you think is so compelling about the Weather Channel's apps?
Well, I'm British, first of all, so I think we're compelled to talk about the weather at least 50 times a day. So that puts us all in a good place. But it turns out that it's not just us, in fact. So a good chunk of our audience actually checks the weather in our app 50 times a day. And in fact, if you look at our numbers, we're coming up to about 106 million downloads now. Across our audience, if you look within 3 days, around 60+ % of our audience has checked back in our app, so within 3 days. 70% within 5 days, and within a week, nearly 90% of our active audience has checked back within our application. So I think that just really speaks to how frequently people want to go in and find out what's there with the latest case in the weather. And in fact, when you look at the numbers for what the biggest mobile use cases are, certainly Michael at ESPN there checks in the top, but weather really is one of those categories that everybody comes in to take a look at.
Wow. Have you guys talked to consumers at all to see what is the obsession with weather? I mean, I check it maybe once a day before I go out, but why multiple times a day?
It affects everything, and I think it's easy for us, or maybe for us West Coast residents here, to forget quite how impactful it is. So the Weather Channel is actually based in Atlanta, and the first trip that I had down there was my first experience of hail the size of golf balls. This is hailstones that can punch a hole through a windshield. And I had never seen anything like that before. As I was about to leave the office and head out into the car park to drive back to the hotel, the security guy had to grab me and say, "You can't go out there." And I'm like, "This is strange." I've never actually experienced weather here in the Bay Area or even in England where I couldn't actually leave the building. And I think that's why you see that very powerful need to check. But it's not just severe. Whether it's your kid's ball game, whether it's your commute, whether it's your wedding day at the weekend, people want to know what that weather's going to be like, because it affects not just what they're going to do and how they're going to plan their day, but how they feel.
So you guys recently acquired the Weather Underground. Can you talk about what that will mean for the accuracy for your forecasting down the line?
Sure. So Weather Underground's a great company. They have built a very strong community of around 50,000 personal weather stations, 30,000 of those in the US. These are people who've gone and bought out their own weather station. They've attached it to the roof of their house, and they're sending us data in many cases every 2 seconds. Just to put that into some context, the Weather Channel, the Weather Company as we are today, we're really a data company.
Yeah.
We take data, we ingest it from a number of different sources. I think a number of people think that we take maybe the NOAA, the government weather data, and we just repurpose it. That's really not the case. Not only do we take that data, but we buy more data from the European Union than any individual European country, as we found out very recently. We take that data, we blend it together, and we produce a forecast that's about 6 points above the national weather forecast today. When we move in, one area that we don't always get it totally right is where we have little microclimates, and San Francisco is a good example of those microclimates. Once we bring on board the personal weather station data from the Weather Underground network, what we'll have is around about an 8 to 9 percentage point increase over and above the National Weather Service, which is very important.
Gotcha. I feel like a big part of what drove the downloads is that everybody knows the Weather Channel. It's kind of a pretty big brand name when it comes to weather. So how big a part do you think that was in terms of driving 100 million downloads? And what are the other things that you think kind of encourage that for people?
So we don't pay for installs, which is great. And I think that our brand is exactly what's done that for us. By being that innovator, 30 years ago, the Weather Channel put their own technology in every single cable playout center so they could deliver a local forecast to all those different cities in the US. Being that early innovator there, and then having the bright idea to buy the domain name weather.com, of course, certainly helped along the lines. That put them in a position where they were able to partner with Apple and launch an application on the platform right at the start there.
Oh yeah, you were there at the beginning.
Right there at the beginning, and really be one of those big players to make sure that the trusted brand, the trusted quality of that weather forecast can come and be represented across screens. Because ultimately, the TV business is complicated and fragmented. I think it's fair to say that we've got a lot of new management coming into the Weather Channel. We have David Kenny, we have Kurt Hecht coming in. And the company a little bit had maybe lost its way, was not focusing on what it did best, which was the weather. And so you saw that reflected across the platforms. TV ratings were kind of up and down. Web growth had kind of for like the same as many publishers, web growth had reached a point where it wasn't the stellar numbers that we've been seeing for the previous years. And the company was wondering exactly what we want to do there. One of the previous panels was talking about those TV dollars, those digital dimes and mobile pennies. I wouldn't say it's necessarily mobile pennies, but certainly we have around 1.5 times the traffic on mobile that we do on weather.com, but we only see around 50% of the revenue today, and that's really where we are here to make a big difference there.
Gotcha, cool. Can you, you have some slides you want to show off the revenue or like your strategy for putting ads on the mobile
for people
apps?
who've used the Weather Channel apps, I came in to run the mobile group now mid last year. And one of the things that struck me was it was kind of dated. I don't mind saying.
Sure.
A little bit like a number of different companies that started out early and have tried to pick a course through there. It was looking, I've got a slide here just to show the original look and feel. It was very text heavy. This is the Android version. The iPhone one was a little bit cleaner, but I'll focus on Android because we jumped on there first, and we see the most growth on Android. While we see a little bit more use on mobile, on the iOS platforms, we definitely see the growth coming there. So it's very text heavy, sure. It gives you the information you need. You can go across from right now to hourly to 36 hours and 10 day. We were one of the first people to give a 10-day
I see a tiny little banner ad, sure.
And a little banner ad in there. So it was clearly a challenge. So we tried to think about how we could really drive growth, and we can drive growth. Obviously, there's a number of levers we can pull. We can try and get some new users into the application, and that's probably those people that don't realize they need our app today. Maybe they use the built-in weather experience in the iPhone or the Android phone. Maybe they go and use a ski report app, for example, without knowing that certainly as weather.com, we're the #1 in ComScore for ski and snow information. So there's a lot of scope for us to try and bring on board new users. There's also a lot of scope to get more time out of those users that we already have. It's not exactly a content experience, as you can see there today. On the web, we have some great video. If you want to see pictures of dogs in snow, we are the #1 source for dogs and or cats in snow. And you laugh, but it turns out people like cats on the internet. Who knew?
Embrace it.
So we have an awful lot of great content that we want to be able to introduce in this application to get some more time spent. And of course, on the ad side, increasing that revenue per page. Well, those banner ads, if you try to run, we're a premium publisher, I'll come back to that, but if you try and run your direct sold unit in exactly the same position as your unit that's going to go to an ad network for a fraction of the cost, that's ultimately only going to be a race to the bottom. Now, we're in a position where, because of the planning aspect of our application and our service, people come to us because they're trying to find out what they want to do today. What am I going to do today? What am I going to do at the weekend? That's a great place to reach people. And so I think we've always been able to differentiate our inventory a little bit, even though we have these same banner ads. But what we wanted to do was to come back and say, well, that's not going to go away. Networks are not going to go away. But we really want to do something that sets us apart. So when we thought about a redesign, this is where we ended up. So what we did, we simplified the design. It turns out if you want to appeal to a younger audience, you also have to make applications that look and feel a lot more like the kinds of applications that those guys use day in, day out. So we simplified it. We made it more infographic-like. And on this Now tab here, instead of taking the banner ad, we've integrated into the actual background of the canvas there a much more impactful message. And in fact, we also make it weather-related. So when the weather's cloudy, we actually force the advertiser to produce a cloudy image for us for the background. Same for sunny, same for snow. That means that we can't run every advertiser. Not everybody's completely applicable. To be honest, there's a few things you can do. If it's tide, it can be sunny or rainy, you can still use your tide. But we're saying really we're a weather company. We sell the weather, and we want to make sure that whatever we do is authentic to that.
Gotcha. So, keep going.
I was going to say, the only other thing that we did here is we looked at the numbers. There's a lot of blocking and tackling that publishers don't always do. We looked at where people go inside our applications. 80% go to a forecast and 20% go to maps. So what we did was we inserted our content, in this case videos, between now and forecast. So as you swipe horizontally in the application, you'll go between now, you'll get to forecast. You just get a glimpse of those videos. And if you're one of those people, millions and millions of people that like the dogs in snow, they're right there for you.
Cool. Well, I mean, you guys really have an interesting interesting data set too for advertisers. Is that something they're taking advantage of yet? Like, if it's raining outside, can you display a specific ad to users, in that location?
Yeah. So I think in the V1 of that, we've been doing weather triggers and weather adapters, as we call them, for a long time. So triggers is really if it's going to rain outside, then I can show one kind of ad, and that tends to be very straightforward. In reality, if it's going to be hot, I'm going to advertise beer. If it's raining, umbrellas. It's very much the 1.0 thinking. What we're doing now with the new weather effects data group within our organization is actually going to that second level and saying, well, it's not just about rainy days drive umbrella sales. It's about saying how how does that weather make people feel, and what type of impact does that have? And it's not always the intuitive things that the planner or the media agency is going to think of. So what we're doing is we're trawling our years and years of weather data, both ourselves plus our Weather Underground acquisition, and we're correlating that data set between us and the marketers themselves. So maybe that's transaction data from a big home improvement company. Maybe it's actually data from one of the credit card companies that comes to us through a data provider. We're correlating that data, and we're actually mining for things that really pull, things that are really aligned to weather to more than one standard deviation. And you start to pull out insights. You say, well, if it's rained for 2 days and then it's been sunny for 1, we see a huge spike in lawn product sales. That would be weed killers, for example,
wow, okay.
fertilizers. In hindsight, it kind of sounds obvious, but it's only when you actually pull that data, you run it through the Hadoop and all the other systems that those guys use, you actually start to pull out those and see how strongly correlated those are. We went and pulled some other data around things like bottled water, and we're able to find that the things that you would intuitively think that makes sense, if it's a hot day, you're going to sell more bottled water. That's certainly true in New York, but it's not really true in Atlanta, because where it's just hot all the time. So really nothing you can do as a marketer is going to impact bottled water sales. It's just a waste of money. And whereas over in Seattle, it's got more to do with humidity, or in fact, in some days, even colder than normal temperatures was driving bottled water sales to more than one standard deviation, which is exactly the opposite of what you think. So if you're a smart marketer, you want to think about how you spend that money. Certainly using that location data, but also the native data that we have, can drive up a much better performance than you would otherwise think.
Gotcha. So are you guys offering that data to advertisers, or is this something you're kind of just doing on your own right now?
Yeah. Yes and yes.
Okay.
in that we offer it to advertisers ourselves, but if you want to buy it, you have to come to us. And I think for a premium publisher, you need to understand how you are different, what it is that you provide uniquely as compared to the networks.
Gotcha. So I'm interested, too, that you guys updated the Android version first of your app. Are you kind of looking at Android more now as the test bed for interesting ideas, or are you focusing now on Android development just because that's where more of the users are, probably?
That's a great question. It's also one that Apple asked us. So
okay, of course.
Our updated version of our iPhone application actually launched a couple of days ago, and if you look at the app today, apart from one of my colleagues who managed to get it to crash, if you look at our application today, you'll see that we're running some great Jeep ads in the background. It's a little bit different, and that's because we have a longer heritage with the iPhone platform. I'll be honest, the reason we chose Android is because it was more broken.
Okay.
But I'm saying to you that we see around a much more significant growth on the Android platform, but we see much more significant usage on the iOS platform. And I think that historically goes to the audience. When I was at Yahoo, we did some research on exactly that issue. We saw the same thing. And one of the things that we found was that when people went to buy a mobile phone, if they went into the store and they wanted applications, they went in and said, I want to buy an iPhone because I want apps. If they didn't know what they wanted, but they wanted a nice-looking phone, they were quite often sold the Android phone. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we saw a much heavier usage from the iOS devices, even though we saw that stronger growth from Android.
Gotcha. That's interesting. You were also talking about when you guys were looking to grow your user base a bit, for younger users, the design of the app was kind of part of the problem initially, too. And do you think, have you seen a big change since the redesign, and do you think that's something other companies really need to focus on, too?
Personally, yes, and certainly when we were doing our own direct research, it's very difficult to do maybe to look at the existing data to tell that. So what we did was we did some equivalents of focus groups, and we started doing some kind of customer discovery around that. And really, applications do need to feel like the other applications that age group or that particular cohort of users uses. That certainly came to be very, very clear. What I would say is that it was polarizing. And so when we launched the new Android application to the store, it wasn't really a 3-star application. It was 5 or 1. There was nothing in between. Those existing users that liked that nice kind of text on a blue screen, they hated it. Like they were really vitriol in the store. And the other people, we saw those 5-star reviews like, hey, great redesign, much nicer now, lovely and crisp. The problem is always that one of App Store bias. The people that kind of go, oh, this is pretty nice, they don't really leave reviews. Only the people that really hate it. Those people go in, and our product manager, I think, our poor product manager was kind of holding her head and like, oh no, what have I done? But actually, when you looked at the numbers were fantastically good. So we were seeing huge increases in engagement, and 2-3x. Actually, I think it's still over 3x the amount of video consumption in the application now than we saw previously. So if the numbers are all good, up and to the right, then that speaks for itself.
Nice. You were telling me before too that your biggest competitor really are those preloaded weather widgets and the weather apps that come with phones already. How are you guys going to continue to differentiate and convince people that they actually need to download your app?
Yeah, so I think it's a case of those adjacencies. I mean, if you live in that Midwest or Eastern area where the weather is much more severe and you're trying to track those big storms of golf ball-sized hailstones, people already know that they need to get a good quality map and they need to have the best quality radar. That's a given. Park that and think more about the people out here in California. Well, two things that have been covered so far. One is the adjacencies, as I say, things like ski and snowboarding, kite surfing, lots of other things that are truly weather-related activities that people don't come to us necessarily or think of us first for today, even though we have all that content already. So expect to see more of that. The other one I would say, though, is the amount of people who've said to me that they live on the peninsula and they've come to a meeting in San Francisco and they've completely dressed inappropriately. So it's been, 80 degrees down in Sunnyvale. They put on a T-shirt and shorts. They come to the city, it's freezing. They kind of say, I wish they'd checked the application. And in fact, one of the examples was, why don't you send me a push alert at 6 o'clock in the morning every day that just tells me what the weather's going to be, and then I'm just aware. Even if I don't feel compelled to check it every day, at least I'm aware. And that's some really great feedback, so maybe that's something we'll take on board.
Interesting. You were also telling me that you guys are going to work a little more on the extreme weather story. Anything you could tell us about that, what we're going to see later this year?
Yeah, so you'll see a much more in-depth hurricane experience. I think Storm Center within the application. I think it's more of a mini app experience. There's a set of these adjacencies, whether it's skiing, whether it's hurricanes or storms, that not everybody needs, but the people that do are super passionate about them. So imagine a kind of mini app store, I would say. That's a bit of an overstatement, but within our application that allows you to select some of those additional bolt-ons. Now, one of the big questions, both internally and externally, would be, why would you do that in the same application versus in other applications?
Sure.
And the answer may be that we do both, but I think ultimately it comes down to discovery. As I say, we don't pay for installs. We have a huge brand. We're #1 in the weather category. I think we need to leverage that, drive the wood behind the arrow that we have, and make sure we can grow out.
Cool. Any questions for Alex? Anybody? We're running down on time here. Oh yeah, go ahead. Behind you. No? Oh. Okay.
We're good?
Fine.
We can keep going.
Okay. Let's keep going. We only have 3 minutes left. It's fine. You used to be at Yahoo, and you were in charge of mobile ads there.
Sure.
What is the experience like now at the weather company versus Yahoo, and what did you learn from your experience at Yahoo?
Yeah, I mean, I always want to be cognizant of prior and future employers,
sure.
But
smart. Yes.
I think the interesting thing, the thing that attracted me towards the weather company was the fact that they recognized that they were ultimately going to be a mobile company. So sooner or later, they will be a mobile company. I don't think TV is going anywhere. There will always be a case for long-form entertainment and some of the new programs, Coast Guard Alaska, the Reef Wranglers. These are actually getting towards that point where they're very strong programs that stand by themselves. Weather.com, also not going anywhere. But I think if you look at the use cases, Weather.com is more about planning. TV is about long-form entertainment and severe, tracking Hurricane Sandy. We are the biggest news network by far when there's a storm on, and then when it's not, it kind of dips down again on TV. But if you want to know what the weather's going to be like today, you're going to check your phone. I think the weather company gets that. David Kenny gets it. And he's put not just the priority of the company, the money, resources behind that. It makes a huge difference. You can counterpoint that to Yahoo however you will.
Gotcha. You were telling me something like, I think working with Yahoo, there was a lot of talk about mobile, but not very much action. And is that a worry for other companies in terms of how they approach mobile? Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that kind of is said in the point there that I just made. What I would say is there was a lot of back and forth on the Yahoo
sure.
side between whether we should have one central mobile group or whether mobile should be split out among the different teams. I don't know if there's truly a right or a wrong answer. What I would say is it's pretty obvious if you're not spending enough money and time because the output is not going to be what you see. That said, when Yahoo finds out what it wants to be when it grows up, I think it's going to be in a very strong place.
Interesting. Okay, so we got a minute left. What is, you joined the weather company, 2 years ago? A couple years ago?
Oh, no, in about 9 months.
9 months, okay. So what have you learned in your time there so far?
I have learned that the weather is far more awesome than I possibly comprehended. I've learned that there's a number of facts that I now know that I think are fascinating that many people don't.
Cool.
Well, did you know that radars are polarized in 2 directions, not just one?
Nice.
Case in point. So there's a lot of interesting things there. And what I would say that I've learned more than ever is that being true to what you as a company hold dear, going in market, representing and selling the weather is more important than anything else that we could do. We're not a portal. We're not just a TV station. We're the weather company. We own the weather. We name our own storms now, for much as the National Weather Service maybe doesn't like that. But we name our own storms. We go out and we make the market. We push it in the direction we want to go, and that's what ultimately will make you successful.
Cool. Yeah, I never thought weather could be so exciting and so interesting. So thank you for chatting with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.